Now it's all or nothing for Detroit. After Week 15, reality hit hard, and as Lions fans, there's no sugarcoating it. The team sits at 8-6, outside the playoff picture as the number 8 seed in the NFC, with just a 41% chance to make the postseason. That alone shows how razor-thin the margin for error has become. The 41-34 loss to the Rams wasn't just another stumble in the standings. It was a game that exposed both the strength and the fragility of this roster at the exact moment when mistakes are no longer acceptable. The offense? Elite. The numbers speak for themselves. Nearly 380 yards per game, fourth in the NFL, and the league's top scoring offense at 30.6 points per game. Jared Goff is playing high-level football, leading an offense capable of going score for score with anyone in this league. But when you put up 34 points and still lose, the conversation immediately shifts to the other side of the ball, and that's where the real concern lives. What's going wrong? What can still be fixed? And most importantly, do the Lions still control their own destiny? That's exactly what we're breaking down right now. So make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and stick with me, because today it's all about the Detroit Lions, maximum pressure, and a final stretch that promises intense emotions. Defensively, the Lions rank 21st in total defense and 23rd in scoring defense, allowing 24.6 points per game. Against the Rams, the issue wasn't just yards or points, it was how Detroit lost control of the line of scrimmage. That's been a recurring theme in too many losses this season. When this team gets pushed around up front, it changes everything. It puts more pressure on the offense to be perfect, and as Dan Campbell said himself, against a team like the Rams, you have to play close to a perfect game. Detroit didn't do that. They made too many errors, and at this stage of the season, those errors are the difference between being in control of your destiny and needing help from everyone else. And that's the most frustrating part of the current situation. Detroit does not control its own destiny. Even if the Lions go 3-0 down the stretch, they still need things to break their way. The head coach made it clear, though, that confidence inside the building hasn't disappeared. Campbell talked about belief in the character of this team, the captains, the core of the roster. That matters, especially now, because the remaining schedule offers no easy outs. Pittsburgh comes to Detroit next, sitting at 8-6 themselves, followed by a road trip to Minnesota, and then finishing the season in Chicago. Every one of those games carries playoff weight, directly or indirectly. When you zoom out and look at the NFC North picture, it gets even more complicated. Chicago leads the division at 10-4 and holds the number 2 seed, with a 74% playoff probability. Green Bay is right behind them at 9-1 and still owns an 88% chance to make the playoffs despite a brutal loss to Denver and a wave of injuries. Minnesota, while eliminated, still has games that directly impact Detroit's fate. The Lions are stuck in the middle of all this chaos, needing wins and help, knowing that Chicago and Green Bay both hold scenarios where Detroit simply can't catch them if things don't break perfectly. What gives Detroit hope is simple: offense travels, and this offense can score on anyone. Goff gives this team a chance every single week, but hope alone doesn't fix the defensive inconsistency. The question hanging over this team isn't whether they can score enough points, it's whether they can find a way, just for 3 weeks, to play complementary football. Can the defense be good enough, not elite, just good enough, to avoid putting the offense in a position where it has to be flawless? Can the Lions avoid getting bullied up front when everything is on the line? Because if they can't, the numbers, the probabilities, and the standings will all catch up quickly. As a Lions fan watching this unfold, you can feel how close this team is, and how far away it still might be at the same time. 3 games left, no margin for error, and a playoff picture that demands both perfection and patience. Do you believe this team can clean up the mistakes and put together the kind of 3-game run that keeps the season alive? Or have we already seen the ceiling of this group in 2025? What makes this final stretch so emotionally heavy is that Detroit is not collapsing because the offense can't keep up. In fact, statistically, this is one of the most productive offenses in the entire NFL. Being first in scoring and fourth in total yards is not something you stumble into by accident. This unit is carrying real weight, and it's the reason the Lions are still mathematically alive. But football doesn't reward imbalance in December. When you reach this point of the season, weaknesses are no longer hidden, they're attacked. Every opponent knows exactly where Detroit can be tested, and until proven otherwise, that soft spot is the defense, especially in the trenches. The numbers back up what we're seeing with our eyes. Allowing over 24 points per game puts the Lions near the bottom third of the league, and when you're facing teams that are also fighting for their playoff lives, that margin becomes deadly. Look at what's ahead. Pittsburgh comes in with the same record as Detroit, 8-6. That is not just another game. That is a direct measuring stick. Win it, and you stay alive with momentum. lose it, and the path narrows dramatically. Minnesota, despite being eliminated, is not a throwaway game either. They've already shown they can play spoiler, and division games late in the season are never predictable. Then everything potentially comes down to Week 18 in Chicago against a Bears team that could still be playing for the division or playoff positioning. That's the reality. No favors, no shortcuts. The frustrating part is knowing that if Detroit were even slightly more consistent defensively, the conversation today would be completely different. One or two stops in key moments, one or two fewer breakdowns up front, and this team might be sitting comfortably inside the playoff picture instead of chasing it. That's why Dan Campbell's comments matter. He didn't sound defeated. He didn't sound like a coach searching for excuses. He sounded like someone who knows the window is still open, but also understands how narrow it is. The emphasis on character, leadership, and belief isn't coach speak right now, it's necessity. When you don't control your destiny, all you can control is how you respond. There's also a bigger picture hanging over this final push. If Detroit does find a way in, nobody is going to want to see an offense that can put up 30 points on any given Sunday. That's the dangerous part. The Lions are flawed, yes, but they are not harmless. The idea of where anything can happen in the playoffs isn't just a cliche when you have a quarterback playing confidently and weapons that can stretch defenses. But to get there, this team has to prove, starting now, that it can win ugly if needed. Not every game down the stretch will be a shootout. At some point, the defense has to hold, even briefly, even imperfectly. This is where the fan base comes in emotionally. You can feel the tension because we've seen versions of this story before. Seasons where hope stays alive late, only to slip away because the details weren't clean enough. But this roster is not built the same way as those past teams. The offense is real. The belief inside the locker room sounds real. What's missing is execution when it matters most. 3 games is not a long time, but it's long enough to redefine how this season is remembered. Now it comes down to you as a fan watching this unfold. Do you see a team that's ready to respond when its back is against the wall, or do you see a group that's simply run out of room to grow this year? Let me know what you think about where the Lions truly stand heading into these final games, and if you believe this team still has one last surge left in it. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to keep following every twist of this playoff chase, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and keep watching because the next few weeks are going to decide everything for this Detroit Lions season. At this stage, the margin between belief and reality is razor thin, and that's what makes these final games so revealing. Detroit is no longer in a position to talk about potential or progress in abstract terms. Everything is being measured snap by snap. The standings don't care how explosive the offense is if the defense can't get off the field when it matters. Being 8th in the NFC is a lonely place, because it means you're close enough to see the door, but not close enough to open it yourself. The 41% playoff probability reflects exactly that feeling. It's not hopeless, but it's far from comfortable. What keeps this season from slipping into disappointment is the fact that the Lions still have answers on offense. When the pressure rises, that side of the ball hasn't flinched. Scoring over 30 points per game across a full season is not something that disappears overnight. That gives Detroit a chance in every matchup remaining, even against teams with stronger defensive identities. The problem is that chances don't equal guarantees. Every missed tackle, every breakdown up front, every extended drive allowed by the defense compounds the pressure on the offense to respond immediately. That's not sustainable football in December, especially when opponents are built to capitalize on mistakes. The contrast within the division only sharpens the frustration. Chicago sits at the top, riding takeaways and timely defense. Green Bay, despite injuries, still holds a strong playoff position. Minnesota, even eliminated, continues to impact the race. Detroit is surrounded by teams that are either ahead of them or capable of disrupting their path. That means the Lions have no luxury games, no mental lapses allowed. Each remaining opponent has a reason to play hard, whether it's playoff positioning, pride, or divisional impact. This is why the conversation around physicality matters so much. When Detroit has struggled, it hasn't been subtle. Losing battles at the line of scrimmage changes the entire flow of a game. It limits what the defense can do, extends drives, and shortens the margin for error. Fixing that doesn't require a complete overhaul, but it does require urgency and accountability. It requires the defense to find a baseline level of consistency that has been missing too often. Not dominance, just reliability. From a fan perspective, this is the hardest part of the season. You're watching a team that is clearly good enough to scare people, but not yet proven enough to trust completely. Every Sunday feels like a referendum on the entire year. Win, and hope grows louder. Lose, and the math becomes brutal. And yet, the opportunity is still there. 3 games is a short runway, but it's enough to change everything if the Lions can align execution with belief. So as this stretch run begins, the question isn't about talent anymore. It's about response. How does this team react when it knows there's no safety net left? Does the defense rise just enough to support the offense? Does the physicality improve when it has to? Or does the season end with the feeling that something important slipped away? That's where I want to hear from you. Do you believe the Lions can tighten up defensively just enough to let this offense carry them into the playoffs? Or do you think the flaws are simply too deep to overcome in these final weeks? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and stay with the video, because the next games will define how this season is remembered in Detroit. What also can't be ignored in this moment is how small the difference is between Detroit being viewed as dangerous and Detroit being viewed as disappointing. The Lions are not being blown out week after week. They are in games. They are scoring. They are competing. But the NFL does not reward almost, especially late in the season. Being competitive without closing is how seasons quietly slip away. That's why these final 3 games are less about style and more about survival. Detroit doesn't need to look pretty. Detroit doesn't need statement wins. Detroit needs results, and it needs them now. There's a mental challenge here that goes beyond schemes and matchups. When you know you don't control your own destiny, it can either tighten you up or free you completely. Some teams press, trying to make the perfect play on every snap, and that's when mistakes multiply. Other teams simplify, focus on execution, and let the game come to them. Which version of the Lions shows up will tell us a lot about the maturity of this group. Dan Campbell's words suggest belief, but belief has to translate into discipline, especially defensively. Penalties, missed assignments, and losing leverage up front are the kinds of things that end seasons quietly. The offense has already proven it can handle pressure. That's important. Jared Goff is not playing scared football. He's playing confident football, and that confidence spreads. When an offense knows it can score, it plays faster, cleaner, and with purpose. But that also means the defense has to match that urgency. Even a few timely stops per game can completely change the outcome. One forced punt, one third down stop, one red zone hold. These are small moments that decide big outcomes, and Detroit hasn't consistently owned those moments yet. What makes this stretch so compelling for fans is that nothing is settled. The door is not closed. The Lions are still alive, still relevant, still capable of flipping the narrative. But the clock is loud now. Every week that passes without improvement on defense makes the path narrower. And yet, if Detroit does manage to string wins together, the story of this season changes instantly. Instead of talking about missed opportunities, we're talking about resilience and growth under pressure. That's the tension that defines where the Lions are right now. Hope and concern existing at the same time. A team that can score with anyone, paired with a defense that has to prove it can be trusted when everything is on the line. 3 games to answer questions that have been building all season. 3 games to decide whether this year becomes a stepping stone or a turning point. Now I want to know where you stand as this final stretch begins. Do you trust this team to respond when the pressure is highest? Or are you preparing yourself for a season that comes up just short? Leave your opinion in the comments, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, and keep watching, because the ending of this Detroit Lions season is about to be written right in front of us. As this season approaches its defining moments, the feeling around this team is no longer about waiting to see what might happen. It's about confronting what must happen. Detroit has reached the point where execution is the only truth that matters. The offense has already answered every major question asked of it. It has shown consistency, explosiveness, and the ability to respond under pressure. There's no debate there anymore. The remaining uncertainty lives entirely on the other side of the ball, and that uncertainty is what keeps this playoff push hanging in the balance. What makes these next games so critical is that the Lions don't need a complete transformation. They don't need to suddenly become a top 5 defense. They need incremental improvement in the moments that decide games. They need to shorten drives. They need to avoid getting pushed backward at the line of scrimmage. They need to force opponents into uncomfortable situations just often enough to give the offense room to breathe. That's not an unrealistic demand, but it is a demanding one, especially when fatigue sets in late in the year. From a fan's perspective, this is where trust is tested. Trust in the coaching staff to adjust. Trust in the players to respond. Trust that the lessons from losses haven't been wasted. The Lions are no longer chasing respect. They have it. What they're chasing now is validation. Validation that this team can close. Validation that this season is more than just strong numbers and close losses. Validation that when the pressure peaks, the Lions don't fade. There's also a sense that these games will shape how this core is viewed moving forward. Not just externally, but internally. How a team handles adversity at this stage sticks with it. Wins create belief that lasts beyond one season. Missed opportunities linger. That's why urgency isn't just about the standings, it's about identity. Detroit has the chance to define itself as a team that rises when it has to, rather than one that looks back wondering what could have been. Everything now funnels into one simple reality. The Lions must win, and they must do it together. Offense and defense, momentum and discipline, belief and execution. Nothing else matters. No style points, no excuses, just results. There's also an uncomfortable truth that has to be faced as this season reaches its final stretch. Time stops being generous. Early in the year, flaws feel correctable. Late in the year, those same flaws become defining traits unless something changes fast. For Detroit, the question isn't effort or desire. No one watching this team doubts how badly they want it. The question is whether urgency can finally translate into consistency, especially when opponents know exactly where to attack. This is where the pressure sharpens. Every opponent on the remaining schedule understands the situation Detroit is in. Pittsburgh knows this is a must-win environment. Minnesota knows they can still shape the division race. Chicago may be fighting for positioning or the division itself. Nobody is easing up, and that means Detroit has to bring playoff-level focus before the playoffs even arrive. That's a hard ask for any team, but it's the reality when you sit outside the bracket looking in. What makes this moment so fascinating is that the Lions are still dangerous. Even teams ahead of them in the standings don't look at Detroit as an easy out. A team that scores over 30 points per game forces opponents to stay aggressive for 4 quarters. One lapse, one stalled drive, one missed assignment, and the game can flip. That's the threat Detroit brings every Sunday. But danger only matters if it's paired with control. And control, right now, is what this team is still chasing. There's no longer room for split performances. No more games where the offense shines and the defense struggles to keep pace. No more stretches where physicality disappears at the line of scrimmage. These last games demand completeness, even if it's imperfect, even if it's ugly. The